So since it was introduced that I lived as a monk for 15 years, that's usually the elephant in the room where everybody wants to know how that happened and why that happened. So I figured let me go ahead and tell you how I became a monk and why. And now I'm not a monk anymore. So can you guess what question I get asked all the time now? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to share all of that with you and then get into a little bit about creating a positive and mindful workplace culture. First of all, I'm really happy to be here, and it's totally fine that it's cloudy outside because, I think it all depends on our mindset, how cloudy we want it to be in our lives. If we want it to be a cloudy day, whether we want it to be a sunny day, I think it all really depends on our own mindset, right? So I grew up in Southern California. My parents migrated from India to the US in 1980, and they came over with very little to no money. So one of the first things that they did was they set up a small shop on Venice Beach. How many have been to Venice Beach? Okay, pretty exciting place, right? So that was my first exposure to American culture, was Venice Beach, Southern California. And so my parents, as they're working hard 7 days a week, I'm learning how to skateboard and surf and play basketball and falling in love with pizza. So that was my experience in Venice Beach. So they were working 7 days a week, and within a matter of about 8 years, they were able to establish a multi-million-dollar jewelry business, and they built this beautiful home in Southern California on the hills of Los Angeles, California, right here. And literally we began living the American dream within about 8 years. It was much faster than we had expected. We didn't expect this kind of success. Of course, that comes with not just hard work, but you have to have some breaks and a lot of luck as well. So we're living in this massive home, 6 bedrooms, pool, jacuzzi, waterfall, and everything is going great for a certain amount of time. But in the early 1990s, my parents' jewelry business, their factory actually catches on fire, and we ended up losing everything. Went almost completely broke once again. So it was, started here, went up, and then went right back down. So in the early 1990s, when we lost everything, and my dad's trying to figure out what's the next thing to do, because when you're used to living that lifestyle, it's hard to step down. No problem stepping up. It's hard to step down. So he was trying to figure out what's the next thing he can do. So he decides to explore new business opportunities in post-communist Bulgaria. How many have been to Bulgaria? No one? Really? Okay, all right. You guys don't get out enough. Come on, you got to go to Bulgaria. So he goes to Bulgaria. We pack up everything that we have and leave LA for good and move to Bulgaria. And so I went from living in a place like this to a one-bedroom apartment in one of these types of buildings. Like everything looked the same. So, a lot of the countries during that time were coming out of the USSR. And so there were some open opportunities for business because everything looked the same. Everybody had the same clothes. All the restaurants had the same food. It was a very interesting place to be. Now, of course, the other thing was that in the early 1990s, no one spoke English in Bulgaria. So here I am going to a very foreign country where no one speaks the language. Everything on TV is either in Russian or in Bulgarian. All the movies are several years old because I don't think American movies were allowed during the USSR period. And there were no basketball courts, no tennis courts, no internet. So just imagine, what would your life be like if everything that you do for recreation and entertainment you could no longer do from tomorrow morning? That's kind of what happened to me. So when all of my external recreation and distractions came to a complete halt, that's when I began my inward journey. I started to ask that question that we ask ourselves when things don't go right. Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? How do I get out of this situation? I mean, I don't think I was able to fully process what that move was like to Bulgaria. And so we spent a couple of years in a very kind of somewhat of a turbulent environment because the government had just changed. And then we didn't feel so safe, so then we decided to leave Bulgaria, move back to the US. My folks didn't want to go back to LA, I guess too many memories. So they moved to the East Coast to New Jersey so they could be close to Manhattan. So they started a retail operation there. I helped them with that a little. And then I worked in the mortgage industry for a little bit. And then finally in 1999, I decided that I'm going to take a little break from life and just figure out who I am and what I really want to do with my life and how I want to proceed with my life and what impact and do I want to leave on the world. So I decided to go to a monastery in Mumbai, India. This is in 1999. And I've never lived in a monastery before. So here I am flying off to Mumbai to live with 40 monks in this very busy environment in Mumbai. And Mumbai makes Manhattan look like the suburbs. I mean, really. Mumbai, it's like 22 million people. It really makes Manhattan look like the suburbs. So here I am, sleeping on a hardwood floor, kind of like the one on the stage, with a thin straw mat. That's how everybody slept. Everybody had a small closet. We woke up at 4 in the morning. That's the time I used to go to sleep. So now we're waking up at 4 o'clock. And we're meditating for several hours a day. And the rest of the day was spent serving one another and serving the community at large. So the idea was I was learning how to live a life of simplicity, humility, and service. 3 things I'd never even thought of when I was living in LA. I don't think those words came across my mind at all. So I decided to spend, the idea was I was going to spend a month in India. That was it. Like that's a month in a monastery is enough. But then I fell in love with that lifestyle, and then I ended up spending a total of 6 months in India, traveling to a few different monasteries. And after that, I decided that I'm going to come back to the US, and I moved into a monastery in New York City. Now, you may be wondering, is there such a thing as a monastery in New York City? Well, there's everything in New York City. You just have to look for it. It's just a brownstone building. You can't tell it's a monastery. It's not going to look like some monastery that you see in pictures of, in Thailand or India or something like that. It's a brownstone building with monks living inside. So I moved into this monastery in New York City on the Lower East Side. How many have been to the Lower East Side? Okay, it's just it's like Venice Beach without the beach, right? Similar culture, similar environment. So, I started at that point doing a lot of work with students at Columbia University, New York University, and traveling around the country, doing talks on mindfulness, work-life balance, stress management. And I ended up spending a total of 15 years living as a monk. It wasn't something that I had planned, as you can tell from my life. It's not anything that I had planned. I fell in love with the lifestyle, ended up staying for 15 years. So then the big question, why did I leave the monastery? Well, around the 14th year, I felt like I'd gained everything I could from that experience, and I'd acquired a lot of information and knowledge, and I wanted to take that into the corporate environment. I wanted to share that with corporate America. And I knew if I was just showing up in robes everywhere, I wouldn't be allowed in the doors. So I had to get rid of the robes and start wearing normal clothes. And so I just wanted to take this information to the broader audiences around the US and around the world as well. So that was one of the main reasons that I transitioned out of the monastic life. So just to really prove that I did live as a monk, I have a couple pictures of me as a monk, because maybe you think he's just telling us this wild story. We have no proofs, seeing is believing. So I have a couple pictures here of me as a monk. One is of me as a monk in India, and the other is of me as a monk in New York City. And I just want you to really pay attention and see if you can tell which one is which. Which one's in India and which one's in New York. Oh. Okay, I think you all got it. For those of you who aren't laughing, you're a little confused, just ask me afterwards. I'll explain it to you. So this one here on the right, this was about 10 years ago. NPR contacted me. They found out about me through Columbia University, and they wanted to do a story on a monk living in New York. And so they followed me around for an entire day doing this like a documentary on what's it like to be a monk in New York. And the ladies there like photographing me as I'm getting up and started doing the meditation and everything. So that's where that is. That's actually on 4th Street right there. So, and this obviously is India. So one of the things that I learned and I talk about, because if we're going to talk about mindfulness, it's important to understand the mind and how the mind functions and how powerful our mind actually is and what it's capable of doing if we don't do something about it. The one thing that I like to compare the mind to is that of a smart device. And, in our smartphones, we have a lot of apps open. We've downloaded so many apps, we don't even know what apps we have on our phone, and we open up a bunch of apps and we forget to close them out. Now, what happens when you forget to when you have too many apps open and you don't close them out? What happens to your phone? It slows down, right? It drains the battery. And so then you have to clear the apps out. You have to either turn it off and turn it back on. Now, what do you think is happening in your mind? How many apps do you think are open in your mind at any given time? Right? We can't even count. Right? Now, our mind has apps that are open from decades ago. Way before smart devices were invented, we already had one. It came with us. Right? When we came out of the womb, it came with us. It was part of the package. And immediately apps start opening. The moment you come out of the womb, apps are opening, and we don't know how to close them out. So mindfulness is about understanding which apps are actually open in our mind, and then closing out the ones we don't need so we can focus our attention and time on the things that we do need. So can we all agree that there's probably a bunch of apps on our mind that we would rather just close out? Right? Yeah, okay, I think we all agree with that. According to psychology today, an average person has between 25,000 and 50,000 thoughts every single day. So the mind is a very busy place. If you break that down per hour, that's about 1,000 to 2,000 thoughts every single hour. I mean, there's a lot going on. Every couple of seconds, our mind changes to something else. It just starts pulling up information from, if you think about all the data that's going in every single day, every little thing that we see gets registered into our mind. And this is what's happening in our mind. It's going in, our thoughts are going in two directions, basically. Right? Our mind is either in the past, remembering old things from the past, or it's planning the future. Now, how many of you think you spend more time remembering things from the past? Raise your hand if you think you spend more time in the past. Okay. All right. And how many of you think you spend more time planning the future? Okay, more people planning the future. So, and of course, we probably do a little bit of both. Right? We're probably doing both. Now, unfortunately, the mind has this tendency, when it's thinking about things in the past, it has this tendency to dwell on the negative things that have happened in the past to us. Times that people have hurt us or betrayed us, or just something difficult and challenging that happened with our life. Now, how many of you can say honestly that you still remember something from over a decade ago, something negative, and it still affects your mood when you remember it? Raise your hand if you have that experience, right? Most of us have had that experience. Now, do you want to remember those things and dwell on them? Okay, good. I'm glad nobody said yes. Like, okay, we need to have a conversation afterwards. I'll give you a free monk session afterwards if you said yes to that one. So we don't want to. You could be on vacation at the beach, nice warm environment, drinking your favorite drink, and all of a sudden your mind decides to pull up something from 5 years ago. And now you're diving into that memory, and you're affecting your mood, and you don't want to. You didn't plan to think of something negative while on vacation. I hope not, at least. Right? You didn't plan to do that, but it did it anyway. So the mind just opens up these apps. But wouldn't it be great that the moment you recognized, oh, I'm thinking of this thing, I don't need to think about it. I don't want to think about it. Let me just close it out right now. Even if you saved yourself 10 minutes or 15 minutes of dwelling on that negative thought, how much emotional energy could you save yourself? And imagine if throughout your life, if you learned to close out a negative, useless app so that it doesn't drain you, how much emotional energy, mental energy, would you save yourself throughout an entire lifetime? It's just something to think about, because when our mind gets distracted, we're frustrated, we get angry, we get sad, we get depressed, we lose productivity. Because we're no longer doing the thing we were supposed to be doing. Now we're living in our head. And we're not used to, we haven't been trained or taught to pay attention to our mind and what's happening up there. So the more we can be alert and present to what's happening up here, the more anxiety and stress we can save ourselves. Because I'm really convinced that most of our anxiety and stress is actually self-induced. We don't need another human being to cause the stress. We do a great job of it ourselves. Just remembering things and dwelling on them. And so, how many of you have done this really beautiful activity where maybe you've had an argument with someone in an early part of the day, and later in the day you start replaying the whole argument all over again? That really mature and adult thing that we do, right? We've all done that. From the laughter, I'm saying yes. I'm thinking that everyone is agreeing with that. Now, how many of you have done this really creative activity is when you're replaying that argument, you start to add new dialogue in there? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, that means we really have achieved a high level of maturity as adults. We should pat ourselves on the back. What is the point of that? What is the point of that? There is no point, but our mind does that thinking, oh, if we have that conversation again, I know what I'm going to say, and I could have said this and I should have said this. You know what? You're never going to have that satisfaction. That conversation is never going to happen again. You want it to really badly, but it's never going to happen. So all that energy being wasted, And then how many of you experienced this where you're having a face-to-face conversation with someone and your mind just drifts off? Well, this audience is agreeing with everything that I'm saying, huh? Okay, I came to the right place. I came to the right place. So, but it's a very normal thing. And, your mind drifts for 10 seconds, and what's interesting is you don't remember hearing anything that that person just said. And that can be scary depending on who you're having the conversation with. And now, what's really interesting is you were physically, awake, present, and standing in front of them. Your ears are open. They're actually also receiving the noise coming out of their mouth. But because your mind isn't present, it's not able to translate that into words or anything. It's just like sound going in. So see how powerful it is, our mind, that if it's not present, you will miss information. You see, that's why there's a whole law against texting and driving. You can't do two things at once. The mind is not able to. Because your physical body, they're present, but you can't remember anything. Even though the sound went in, your brain recognized the sound. You just can't find that file where this information went. So you see, that's why it's so important for us to be able to train our mind to be more present. And that's what mindfulness can really help us do. And so when our mind is not in the past, it's always planning the future. Or let's just say maybe it's worrying about the future. And planning and preparing are good. We need to do that. But how often do we just worry about something unnecessarily that's not even going to show up the way we think it is? Because we always create a worst case scenario, don't we? We've done that kind of thing like, oh my God, if I don't make it to this event on time, I might lose my job. If I lose my job, I won't be able to pay the mortgage. And if I don't be able to pay the mortgage, my whole family will be out on the streets. How are we going to survive? I mean, it's usually never as bad as our mind makes it out to be, right? So whenever we start doing that, wouldn't it be great if we could just press pause on our mind? It's like, okay, I'm stopping this because this is useless. It's not going to turn out this bad. And no matter what happens, it's not going to get that bad. So again, how much energy we save ourselves throughout our life, stress and anxiety, our well-being is determined by how we're able to manage our mind. Something for us to think about. Here is one definition that I like of mindfulness, and I'm sure there's multiple definitions. Becoming aware of one's thoughts and emotions and bringing our mind to the present moment. It's the act of getting in touch with oneself. So, I like this definition especially because I'm going to give you one scenario of how bringing our mind to the present moment and becoming aware of our thoughts and emotions, how that could help us in our day-to-day work life. So imagine this for a moment, that before you leave home, you unfortunately maybe had an argument with one of your family members, right? And now you're just thinking about this argument over and over again. And now you're driving to work. Is it safe to say that while you're driving maybe a little bit affected because of the argument you had, right? You're not fully present because you keep going back to that and you come back and then you kind of going back and forth again and again. And because of that, your driving might even be a little bit more aggressive if you're irritated, you got angry. And now maybe something happens while you're driving and now you get even more angry. And now you're about to drive into work and you have a very important meeting that morning. It's pretty safe to say that the things that happened already are going to affect your ability to focus and be present with your colleagues or whoever you're going to have a meeting with. Now, if we are aware that I'm really upset right now because of this, just identifying this argument caused me to get upset. Not the details aren't so important, but I'm upset because of that. And then, I was driving a little, crazy on, on the freeway and the highway, and somebody cut me off, and I'm even more upset now. And I have to have this really important meeting with my colleagues. How am I going to show up to my colleagues with all of this baggage? So maybe I need to take a few minutes and calm myself down. Maybe I'm just going to take a few deep breaths while I'm sitting in the car. Maybe I'll take a quick walk around the building. Let me get to a better space. But see, all this can only happen if we are aware of our thoughts and emotions and how they're impacting us. Because whatever we're carrying up here is going to spill out into the next interaction we have with other people, especially with our colleagues, students, or whoever you may be dealing with. So taking a moment to recognize what's going on up here and how is that impacting my emotions and behavior and speech. If I'm a little aggressive and I'm feeling a little irritated, maybe I need to calm this engine down a little and then give my full self to my colleagues. So because if you go in all irritable, you say the wrong thing or you're not present, people will pick up on that, and that'll affect your relationship. People think, oh, well, they don't think what I'm saying is important. You know, who knows what they'll start coming up with in their mind then. So anyway, so that's, I think, important, that becoming aware throughout the day. If you had a difficult interaction with a colleague, recognizing that, so, you know, I just had this difficult interaction, and not who's right or wrong, but just understand that how that's affecting you in that moment. Okay, and I'm really upset right now, and I have to have another meeting with someone else. So let me just take a moment, give myself a moment, so that when I go to this next interaction, I don't let that previous one affect it. I mean, we can't fully stop it from affecting it to some degree, but at least we can turn it down a little bit, possibly. So I like this, this news item that I found. After defeat, Japan's World Cup team leaves behind a spotlessly clean locker room and a thank you note. So I think this is a great item of mindfulness, that even if things aren't going our way, even if things didn't happen the way I wanted them to, because then at that moment, we could be kind of sour, irritable, who cares, it doesn't really matter. But I think a part of it in the workplace, that even if things aren't going our way, and things won't always go our way, then to have a right positive attitude anyways, because that is very contagious. If we go negative, that's also contagious, but if we choose to remain positive, then that is also extremely contagious. So even if things, even in life or at work, wherever it is, things didn't go the way we wanted, there were some changes that we weren't expecting or that we weren't hoping for, and now we could become sour about that. But if you think about it, what is that accomplishing? Nothing at all. It's just influencing everyone else around me, that sour mood. So it's not something, that is something we all have responsibility for. We share the responsibility of uplifting one another and creating a positive workplace environment for each other. It doesn't always have to come from the leadership. We can all do that for each other. And I think that's really important. And one key component of creating that positive and mindful workplace culture is a culture of appreciation. And here's what I'm going to ask you to write down answers to some of the things, questions I'm going to throw up here. Okay, so I think you all have some paper and pen. So the first question, how does it feel when we are not appreciated? So just go ahead and write down all the ways that you feel when you're expecting appreciation for something you did, but you didn't get any. So go ahead and write down how you feel, how that makes you feel. And how does it feel when we are appreciated? And try to write down more than just one word for each answer. And what do you think you can do to make your colleagues feel more appreciated? Just the folks that you work with. Folks that you spend 8 to 10 hours a day with. And the final one, which colleagues would you like to appreciate? Maybe you haven't said anything to them in a while, but you've noticed that they've been doing a lot of good work. I want you to write down a couple of names. So I feel that this is a very key component of creating a positive workplace culture. A lot of times, it's easy for us to remember all the times we weren't appreciated. And again, we could have that attitude, because I wasn't appreciated, I don't care. I don't really need to appreciate someone else. That's not my job description. But I think it really totally is our job description to uplift each other. If we can make someone else's day better, why not? So I want to know, what did you write down for the first one? How does it feel when we're not appreciated? What are some of the things that you wrote down? Huh? Upset, okay, great. Disappointed, frustrated, less than, angry, sad, okay. Unmotivated. Okay. Yeah, a lot of stuff just came out, right? Upset, demotivated, angry. So all of these things. Now, how does it feel when we are appreciated? What did you write down for that? Fulfilled. Empowered. Happy, valued, right? Motivated. Now, such positive, right, responses. Now, can you imagine, we hold the key to either allowing people to feel the first set of responses or the second set. We can do that for each other. We don't have to wait for somebody from top down to appreciate us. We can make each other's day a little bit better by appreciating them. But of course, it should be genuine. If you really notice someone that did something really wonderful, then just how much time does it take to go up to them and say something to them like, hey, I really appreciated the way, your comment in that meeting. Or what you just did here made everyone's life a little bit easier. Thank you so much for doing that. And we immediately feel uplifted and valued. So I think, again, we share this responsibility of making each other's day a little bit better and appreciating each other, because too often we get stuck in our own sort of head, and we know all the things that we've done, how long we've been at the organization, and how much we should have been appreciated, but we haven't. Okay, all that's there. But isn't it so much better and more uplifting to start just thinking about other people and what are they doing? What are other people's contributions, and how can I appreciate other people? Not thinking so much about ourselves, but really in our mindset that where we can think about others and what others are doing. And you'll see how powerful and positive that is, and that can really spread to other people as well. Right? So Dean Smith, the late North Carolina coach, he had a really nice rule for his team that the players who scored the ball were explicitly requested to point to the person who passed the ball to them. Because it's because of that pass that the other person was able to score. And also the one who's scoring is getting all the glory. The camera's on them, they're pumping their fists and everything, this crowd's going wild, but the person who made it possible is already running back on defense. The camera's not on them anymore, it wasn't even on them. But it's the duty of the person who got all that glorification to point to the teammate. So don't just be too eager to take all the glory. Know that whatever success you're having, there's probably a lot of other people involved in helping you succeed. If a bunch of people didn't do what they were doing and what they're doing, then we might not have probably achieved that level of success. So really, whenever we have some success, taking a moment to meditate on, wow, who contributed to my success? That really helps make everything, the whole workplace, a little bit more inclusive. So here's a couple of, one thing that I want you to think about. Right? Appreciation and recognition, it's like an emotional bank account, especially if you ever have to give some sort of a feedback to someone. So think about appreciation as the positive deposit into the emotional bank account you have with the individual. And think about feedback, especially, most feedback doesn't feel good when we receive it, even if we know that, yeah, I needed to hear this and all that. We tell ourselves, yeah, I needed this is really helpful for me, but it still hurts. So, if before we give that, we want to make sure that we've made a lot more deposits into that emotional bank account before the withdrawal. Because any bank account that's had more withdrawals than deposits is not sustainable. It'll close down. So we want to make sure that with our colleagues, are we making deposits in those bank accounts? Because sometimes you'll need to make a withdrawal of some kind. It just happens. Human interactions, it doesn't always go well. We're not always present. We'll end up hurting someone's feelings. So if that happens, you want to make sure there was plenty of deposits so that relationship doesn't completely crumble. Right? That you have a sufficient balance there for when those times come. There's also some really nice research from the Wharton Business School where what they did was they were going to make fundraising calls. And before making those fundraising calls, they divided the group up into two. One group made calls as usual. The other group got a call from the director appreciating what they're about to do. It's interesting that the group that received the call from the director, they made 50% more fundraising calls on their own, just because they were appreciated for what they're doing. So it's interesting how we can actually improve not just each other's day, but a productivity of our teams, of our environment, just by having some kind of appreciation. And really, we want to be able to come to a point where we can celebrate other people's success. When others succeed in an organization, to celebrate that. Because too often when things get very competitive, we're not happy to see others succeed. We're almost happy if someone fails. Because like, okay, now I can shine. But that's not the culture we want. So I want to show you a really cool video that I found recently of someone celebrating ecstatically to see someone else succeed, even though they work just as hard as the other person to get to the level that they're at.
And Miss World 2019 is Jamaica.
So, this is a very recent clip, by the way. You might have seen it. It was like, it kind of went viral. But Miss Jamaica won, but her competitor was the one celebrating. You think she won. The way she was jumping up and down, it's just like she won. And I'm thinking, wow, how do you even get yourself to be that happy for someone else? I was just trying to sit there. I saw this. I'm like, wow, how do you do that? Like we can tell ourselves, okay, yeah, I have to go congratulate them, and we tell ourselves all kinds of things. But she was just like genuinely ecstatic, jumping up and down on a world stage, celebrating the success of someone else. And these individuals have spent their entire lifetimes prepping for this moment, right? Decades of their life have been spent working tirelessly to get to this level of success. And then you don't get it. And when you get that close, 3 people left, and then someone else gets it, to actually be that, in that moment, you can just kind of stay calm and not show your disappointment, but to jump up and down. So I want this to, just to remember this and think about, maybe you're not going to jump up and down. I mean, it'd be great if everybody started jumping up and down. If one of your colleagues, got a bonus or got a raise or something great happened, everyone just jumps up out of their chair. I mean, wow, that would be an incredible environment, huh? I think everybody'd want to come and work for you guys then, But anyways, you can take this. Maybe you can, turn it a notch down. It doesn't have to be jumping up and down. But I just think it's just a great way to show how we can try and be happy for each other's success, because that is the environment we want to really spend time in. And according to the Harvard Business Review, positive social connections produce highly desirable results. So positive social connections at work, and I really think that being able to have appreciating each other and what the other's doing and each other's qualities, that helps develop trust, because you see that others are noticing what you're doing, and that helps create positive social connections at work. And since we're spending more than half of our waking time at work with our colleagues, doesn't it make sense to have positive social connections in an environment you're going to spend that much time? If you're happy, you're going to work better. So when we have positive social connections at work, this is what the results show. People get sick less often. People experience less depression. They learn faster and remember longer. They display more mental acuity, and people perform better on the job. So when you're happier at work, you have good relationships with each other, and you support each other in the success, you'll feel happy, right? I mean, when we help someone, don't we generally feel happy inside? Right? It wasn't that we have to get money or things to be happy. Just by serving and helping someone, we felt happiness. So it's a very, The key to life is actually really simple, is what I learned as a monk. Like, really, it is. Key to like being happy is quite simple. Just try to make others happy, and you'll just get happiness. Like literally, you don't have to read any self-help book after this talk. Just remember this one thing in your life. You just try to make others happy, you will be happy. And when you're happy, your entire internal immune system and everything is going to work much better. Your whole body will be happier and healthier just by when you experience happiness. And the easiest way to experience happiness is trying to serve someone else. Literally. Another really key component of having that positive workplace culture is being able to have proper, thoughtful, sensitive, mindful communication with one another. And what does mindful communication mean? It means that we have to think about what we're saying. That's the first thing. What am I about to say? Second thing, how am I going to say it? How am I going to say it? Third thing, what's the impact my message going to have on the person who's going to hear my message or receive it as an email? And fourth, how is it going to affect my relationship with this person after I communicate this? What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? What's the impact? And how is it going to affect my relationship? If we can think about these things before sending a message, I think a lot of our communication can be improved, and that, as a result of that, a lot of our relationships can also be enhanced. So I'm going to put up a few questions for you, again, to write down answers to these simple questions. 3 exercises. This is exercise 1. Can you recall a time when you received harsh or disturbing or maybe insensitive communication? How did it make you feel and why when you received it? So just go ahead and write down, remember that time and how it made you feel and why. So we're going to go on to the next one. Now, again, the whole point about this is to also look at ourselves. Can you remember a time when you communicated? Some little commotion going on out there. Okay, let's see if we can bring our best monk mind forward and just stay focused right here. Can we do that? Just bring our best monk mind forward. Actually, I organized that argument to take place to see who would get distracted. And some of you failed, but a lot of you passed. A lot of you passed. I'm very impressed. Okay, very good. So, now, can you recall a time when you communicated in a way that wasn't so sensitive? You may be like, oh, I've never done that. Just try it. Try to think of a time that you might have accidentally pressed the send button a little too quickly, responded a little too quickly, and how did it affect your relationship with the person you communicated with? And is it still affecting your relationship with that person? Maybe it's been a while. Did you do anything to rectify the situation afterwards? Like maybe you realize that, okay, that wasn't so good. Did you do anything about it? Because again, the whole point about mindfulness is raising our self-awareness to understand what are our shortcomings. Not worrying about other people's shortcomings. What are my shortcomings? How can I improve upon my own self? The third one, how do you feel when you receive positive mindful communication? How does it make you feel? And how does it affect your relationship with the person who sends that? So what I want to do is just take literally a couple of minutes. I want you to, with your neighbor, just share what it was like to go through this writing exercise, and what are you taking from this writing exercise right now on communication? What are you realizing about your own communication or how it makes you feel? Just for a couple of minutes, discuss with your neighbor and have them share with you. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask for your attention, so please give me your attention. It's hard to get 150 people to stop talking, but I'll need your help on this. So go ahead for the next 3 minutes, just share with each other what it was like to go through this writing exercise. Okay, so if I can get everyone's attention once again. Shh. There's something magical about shushing, right? It's amazing. It's like it's deeply ingrained into us from our childhood. The moment you hear a shush, people get quiet, you know? It's amazing. So I just wanted maybe to have a couple people share what was it like to be able to write down the answers to these and share it with your colleague. Just what did it feel like? What are you taking away from this? A couple people I want to share. Okay, have the same experiences. Okay, anyone else? Oh, it was. Okay, that was great. I'm glad. Hey, free therapy session? I'm just throwing that in there. No problem. It's okay. Anyone else? Yes. Okay. So remembering the past was a little unpleasant, but then you can reflect on how to change that behavior. Yeah. So exactly, and you know what? This was a really short amount of time, but I'd like you to continue to have this conversation because you see how much we are impacted by negative communication. So then the reason behind this whole exercise is to realize that this is the impact it has on us. And so therefore, if I communicate in a negative way, that's the same impact it's having on someone else. So I could completely make someone's day or I could ruin someone's day. So something really to think about. And especially if you're in charge of a team of several people, if you're going to send a message to several people, to really be thoughtful, okay, several people's day could be made or broken right here. So just being a little extra thoughtful. So I'm going to share with you a very secret, this is top secret material that I'm sharing with you, okay? Just be, it's like, you only will get it from somebody who's lived as a monk. It's guaranteed to change your communication style forever and improve a lot of your relationships, okay? You're going to be amazed at this, okay? Right here. This is a picture that should be on all our backgrounds of our computer screens. It's telling us we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I know this is blowing your mind. This is the reason that they brought me here today. Not all the other stuff. This was the main picture. Now, can you imagine with our 2 ears and 1 mouth, if we actually used them in those proportions, how good life could be, right? And our relationship would be so much better. Fortunately, we were created with 2 of these and 1 of these. Imagine anything could have happened. I sometimes think about it. As a monk, I kind of thought about a lot of things. I'm like, well, we could have come out with 2 mouths and 1 ear. Like, it could have happened. We could have just evolved in that way. And imagine, I think we'd be on our 20th World War if that had happened. You know, we get ourselves in enough trouble with 1 mouth. Imagine if we had 2. Now, the next portion of this slide is really going to blow your mind. So I think you just make sure you hold on to your seats because you might fall out of them. Our ears are naturally open and our mouth is naturally closed. Take a moment. Take a moment. Take it in. I know. It's like, you know, I got to give you time to digest this kind of, you know, the profundity of that statement, that we were created with open ears and a closed mouth. Can you imagine if it was the other way around? So every day, if we can just remember to listen a little bit more, because these are already open. And every day we can, you know, just really pay attention to someone, how much more powerful our relationships could be with that individual. A few additional keys in terms of improving our communication. make sure that our communication tries to meet these criteria, that it's truthful, but at the same time that it's truthful, is it also beneficial for the person that you're communicating with? Is it going to be beneficial for that particular situation, or could it make it worse? Because sometimes, if we're upset with someone, we may just want to communicate the truth to hurt them. Because the truth can be painful. But can we take a moment, can we take a pause and really see, is it going to be beneficial for the individual and for the situation, for the relationship? Can we communicate in a way that doesn't disturb the other person? Again, all this requires a little bit of thoughtfulness. That's what mindfulness is in the workplace. Just taking a moment before acting or reacting or responding, just understanding, how can I word this so that it doesn't disturb them? And maybe sometimes you can't figure it out. Maybe you're too subjectively involved. Maybe asking a colleague, say, hey, I'm drafting this email. It's going to go to this person. What do you think? How do you think they'll receive it? Even taking those few extra moments, and they could give you some really objective feedback. And that could really save a relationship. And maybe we can even communicate in a way that it's pleasing. Now, I'll admit, you can't always communicate with all four, but even if you can have the first two or three, I think that significantly improves the message and the communication and the ability for the other person to hear your message as well. Another few tips: don't communicate when you're angry. Okay? So when we get angry, our mind becomes clouded. We cannot think rationally when we're upset. We've all said or done things when we're upset that we've later regretted. And the whole concept, the whole road rage idea, where you see two grown men, it's usually men that do this, they have to pull over and duke it out because somebody cut someone off. Like really grown adult, like high school kids, right? That's what that behavior is like. Now, they're not even thinking rationally that I could get hurt, or this person could get hurt and then they could sue me. Or maybe I might get hit by a car because it's on the side of the road. So you see, rational thinking basically stops when you're angry. So if you're angered and you feel angered up here and you're about to communicate a message, remember the words of the former monk. Okay? Just don't do it at that moment. Because even, what's interesting, your mind will convince you, oh, I'm thinking with complete clarity right now. I haven't been more clear ever in my life than right now, and I'm going to compose this message and I'm going to send it right now. It's the clearest time of my life. It's not. The more you're talking to yourself, the less clear you're becoming. With each word and each statement, you're becoming less clear and more disturbed. So what you need to do is not press send. You can compose it and leave it as a draft. Revisit it, or again, have a colleague look at it and say, what do you think? And they'll probably give you some very important edits in that moment. Don't communicate and if you have to have a meeting with someone you're really angry, take a moment. Calm yourself down. Take a few deep breaths. Or you can even, if you're upset because of something else and you have a meeting, you can even tell them, I just had this crazy experience, I'm a little upset. Please forgive me if I seem a little bit like that. At least now they know that you've made them aware that there's something going on with you as a person, and they may be a little bit more thoughtful and they won't take things the wrong way. And don't correct publicly. And that can happen sometimes, because when you embarrass someone, that really can destroy relationships in a bad way. Because if publicly someone's corrected, it's not just that they're embarrassed. No one really likes to see that happening. So it actually is affecting the entire team and office. Everyone who witnessed that is a little disturbed, and now their focus is a little disturbed. When you're angry, when we're upset, we can't actually go back to work and just pretend like nothing happened. You lose productivity. And because we're no longer focused on the activity, we're more prone to committing errors in that moment. So again, thoughtfulness about our behavior in the workplace is very important, because it's affecting a lot of people, not just the two individuals involved. Everyone picks up on it, right? And address concerns privately as much as possible, literally as much as possible. So how many of you have done some kind of mindfulness meditation at some point in your life? Raise your hand. I'm just kind of curious. Okay, quite a few of you. That's great. So, in the past, people thought that it's something more spiritual, something only done by monks. And it was, and it's still done by a lot of people for spiritual purposes. And of course, monks do a mindfulness meditation. But there's a lot of research recently showing that a secular practice of mindfulness can be tremendously beneficial. Right? And I have some sample snippets of some articles. One from Forbes, it says it can make you more productive. And if you're able to close out the apps that we talked about earlier, then you'll be more productive. Then you'll focus on the things that you need to focus on, get those things done. According to the New York Times, it can enhance creativity and memory. Again, the less clutter you have, the more creative you can be and the more you can remember. According to Psychology Today, it can lower and decrease anxiety, depression, and stress. And just imagine, if your depression and anxiety and stress are decreased, you'll be in a so much more a positive state of mind, frame of mind, and you'll be able to work better as well. And according to the Harvard Business Review, it can boost emotional intelligence. It gives us the ability to understand other people's perspective, put ourselves in other people's shoes. And again, it's no longer just for monks. It's being used by professionals across the world for a variety of different reasons. Basically, every industry is using it right now, from kids in schools to professional athletes to CEOs. It's just being implemented by so many different individuals for all of these reasons, for stress reduction and improved emotional intelligence and improved productivity, becoming more compassionate and thoughtful. So since you have me here for a little bit longer, should we go ahead and do a little mindfulness activity, right? Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to guide you in about a 7 to 10 minute mindfulness activity. So go ahead and sit comfortably, close your eyes, and put both feet flat on the floor. Just sit comfortably, lean back in your chair, close your eyes, make sure your hands are comfortable, both feet flat on the floor. And let's just start by coming into the present moment and thinking of nothing except the weight of your feet pushing down into the floor. See if you can just focus on that one item. The weight of your feet pushing down into the floor. Now feel the weight of your body pushing down into the chair. Try not to plan. Try not to think about the past. Stay focused. Feel yourself leaning back into the chair now. Become aware of your hands and fingers and how they're situated. Now let's begin to take a few deep breaths. I want you to breathe in such a way that you fill your lungs completely. And when you exhale, exhale thoroughly and completely. It's the kind of breathing that we need to do more of. And each time you inhale, you should be able to fill up your lungs a little bit more. And when you breathe out, just let everything out, completely de-stressing your body. Now I want you to see if you can breathe in and out just through your nasal passages. See if you can do that. And feel the cool breath entering your nasal passages. And when you exhale, notice that the exhalation is a little bit warmer than the inhalation. So I want you to pay attention to that temperature difference between the ingoing breath and outgoing breath. Again, fill your lungs completely. Now I want you to breathe in such a way that when you fill up your lungs, you also fill up your belly. So your belly expands out as your lungs expand out. And upon the inhalation, your entire upper torso is getting filled up with breath. This is called diaphragmatic breathing. Helps to regulate our emotions, helps to regulate our blood pressure. Everything expands when you inhale, and everything relaxes as you exhale. Nice, deep breathing. Now I want you to bring your awareness to your forehead, in between your eyebrows. And now I want you to look inward into your mind and become aware of the different thoughts and ideas and plans that are going on in your mind. Just become aware of them. Don't engage with them. Don't start planning. Observe your thoughts as you would observe fish inside of a fish tank, from a distance. Learn to distance yourself from your thoughts and emotions. Now take a really deep breath in. As you exhale, breathe out all of the thoughts that you recognize. Let everything go. Empty out your mind, closing out those apps, relaxing your mind. Once our mind is relaxed, our body naturally begins to relax. Take another really deep breath in. This time as you exhale, breathe out any tension you're holding in your face, your eyes, your forehead, your mouth. Let your jaw drop down. Let your tongue slip down to the bottom of the mouth. Just relaxing. And let your shoulders drop down as well. We just become tense throughout the day. Now bring your awareness down into the region of your heart. See if you can pick up on the actual beating of your heart. Now I want you to think of one thing that's happened this week that you're grateful for. And just remember that and feel grateful that it happened. This is a great exercise to shift our mindset. When we're feeling negative or down, to remember something positive. Now I want you to think of one colleague and appreciate one colleague's contributions and qualities. Somebody that supported you or encouraged you, perhaps. Now, something a little more challenging. I want you to think of somebody who you don't see eye to eye with and try to appreciate their good qualities and contributions. It is crucial for us to be able to shift our mindset towards people we don't see eye to eye with. Take a deep breath in. Really fill your lungs completely. Exhale. And bring your awareness to your eyes. And very slowly and gradually begin to open your eyes. Welcome back. I think everyone's back. So how do you feel after that short mindfulness exercise? Huh? Relaxed? Calm? Anybody doze off? All those that laughed did? So See, the thing is, when the mind becomes relaxed, it's very easy for the body to relax too. So I wanted to just see if anybody has any questions about the mindfulness techniques that we just did, or something else that I might have talked about today. We have a few minutes. I want to open it up and see if anyone has any questions. Yes?
Can you give some practical advice on how to work meditation into our workday?
Okay. How can we work meditation into our workday was the question. So there's, I think, a variety of ways that we can do this. One is, perhaps right before we get to work, it could be a good way to just get our mind ready, put aside whatever happened at home, leave it at home, because nothing we can do about it now anyways. Or perhaps if you have a meeting that you're going to go to, just take a moment to do something what we just did. Take 5 or 10 deep breaths and think of something you're grateful for, because immediately your mind shifts. You become happy when you think of something positive in your life. So shift your mindset. And if there's somebody in that meeting that maybe you're not going to be happy to see, do what we did. Think of a couple of positive things about them. Because you need to shift your mindset before going in there, otherwise it won't be a productive meeting. And then, of course, before you go home maybe, so that you can properly be present with your family, maybe before you get out of the car, just try to leave it behind. Breathe it out, feel grateful for what you're walking into, and then engage with them. So these are some ways that we can try to incorporate it through our workday. Any other questions? Yes?
Been on that you're in the meeting and something happened. It's like a micro version of that. Just reset your brain enough in the meeting and forward and not get in that regular.
So while you're in the meeting and something happens in that meeting, what do you do in that moment? And you still have a whole meeting ahead of you. So I think that taking deep breaths, even while sitting there, can really help, because this deep breathing actually has a way of calming down our mind and our muscles in our face. Because the moment we get a little upset, it shows up on our face. And we tense up. It just naturally happens. It's an automatic response. So then if we take those few deep breaths, first acknowledge, okay, I'm a little pissed right now. So okay, you tell yourself that, like, okay, I am. You're acknowledging it. And now you take a deep breath, you take a few deep breaths, and you calm yourself down. That immediately can relax your face a little, just like take a deep breath and relax the face, so that at least now you've kind of, to some degree, reset yourself in that moment. And if you can, think of something positive as well. This is all stuff you can do internally while that meeting's going on. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? So I do have one small gift for everyone. This is the meditation app that I've recently partnered with. And it has a variety of different features for stress reduction, emotional intelligence, better sleep. We're offering a 60-day free trial at this link, meditation.live/enterprise. You do need to sign in with your work ID, and you can use it for 60 days for free. And again, there's different categories. So check it out. This way the conversation continues. And the unique thing about the app is that we offer live virtual sessions. So most of the sessions, about 180 live virtual sessions. They're not just all on meditation. There's also panel discussions that we have, 15, 20-minute panel discussions on self-care, emotional intelligence, mindful leadership. And there's also some fitness classes, short fitness classes. Again, all centered for the workplace. Little things that you can do at work to de-stress. So we went from just meditation, then we expanded to include more things in there, like fitness and panel discussion. So check it out, meditation.live/enterprise. You get a 60-day free trial. And if you do want to stay in touch, or if you want to read more about my story, that's my book. That's me, actually. I didn't hire a model or anything to pose on my book cover. That's me right there in my robes, standing on the rooftop of our building on the Lower East Side. So 2 ways to connect. My website has a lot of information about the different workshops and talks that I do. And you can look me up on LinkedIn and just connect, because I post a lot of what I'm doing, where I'm going on LinkedIn. So that's one of my most active platforms. And you can look me up as Pandit Dasa. So these are ways to connect. If you didn't have a chance to ask a question, I'll stick around a little bit for now for the next 5-10 minutes in case you do want to come up and ask a question, or we can just stay in touch through social media and other ways. And I just want to thank you all very much for being here, being present, and giving your attention for this session. And I really hope our paths will continue to cross here and there and who knows where. And I want to turn it over to Michael, who wants to just make some closing announcements. So thank you all very much.